Alright, well first, thank you for coming out to the Accudemia webinar for setting up a new semester. And what we'll be going over today is mainly imports, but we also have a whole bunch of things that we're going to cover after you're importing, because a big part of the new semester is going to be your imports. As far as end of semester cleanup, there's not really too much involved with Accudemia. The one thing that I'm suggesting here is that you clear up any kind of sessions that are in standby, and you can usually click on that link right there where it says click here to check if there's any unresolved sign-ins. And just to give you an idea, let's see if I'm going to go to my home page. So if I first logged in, it would take me right to my home page, and right here it says that there's session logs that are in standby. So let's see what's that. Okay, so I see the user didn't type in their ID, so I can go ahead and just, for me, I'm going to delete that because I know that's what that was. It's not a full ID. If it was, if there was a way to try and find that student, you could try to, search a similar ID and see who exactly that is and correct their logs. But as far as the in the semester cleanup, that would be one of the only other things. Now we do have a few other things that we recommend. And that's just going into it's that easy, just clicking on any of the unresolved activities. But this is the next thing that you'd want to do is run any of your necessary reports, from the previous semester. Any of these are actually these are from a list of the most frequently ran reports in Accudemia. So if you see one here that you like, you may want to try that out. We're not really doing too much on the reports here, so that's why I just wanted to list these here, but we have some like center attendance by the student, by the subject, center appointments history, the visitor history in a center, and also traffic analysis, which is where you get a lot of charts and graphs on the traffic through your center, and then your class attendance reports. Good ones that have been run a lot is a summary of the attendance of your students, the absentees, basically a list of all the students that and what their absentees are, and then an overall attendance with everything. And then this is a last step, I guess you could say. It's optional. If you want the raw data from that previous semester, you can actually go to your advanced and export on the left hand side here, and it gives you several options of things that you can export out of Accudemia. Two of them that I made note of is the session logs and all appointments. These are things that are actually created within Accudemia that you may want to be able to use that data and transform it however you want through an external program like Excel. But they're generated through the system. A lot of this other stuff, as you'll see, we import into the system, but you may want to export it out as well. So you can see maybe for that semester, all the students that you had or something like that. But that's really all there is to the end of semester cleanup. There's not much once you get your reports and everything. Alright, now we're going into creating the new semester. And to create a new semester, you're actually going to go over on the left, and that's called terms in Accudemia. And you'll click on the terms and then click on the button that says create new. And it's really just as simple as putting the start date and the end date and then giving it a name. So as you can see in this example, we've put summer 2013, and we've started it in May and went until I think that's October. Then you just save the changes. That'll add it into the list here. Once you have that in there, you can start importing into that. The next thing here is to set up your semester off time. So now you have the date range that the semester or the term is going to occur. Now you need to go ahead and put in any exceptions if there's holidays, student breaks, so that way that the system knows that nobody's going to be at the campus or visiting the centers on these days. And you can go to the off times on the left hand side under administration and set that up. And let's take a look real quick. Okay, and they have different filtering options here at the top. You're going to want to do exceptions only to do the off times. And this is where we'd actually go by certain date range as well. So this is showing the week of 2/5. So if I knew that on that week I was going to have, maybe we're going to have Friday as a holiday, so then I would select that and drag it down, and it automatically knows that we're going to set that to well, off time. We can click on it if it doesn't have it set already. Then you can give it a description. Which I know we don't want to see those too many teacher workday, student holiday, but that's how you would add that in so that it doesn't count the student's absence for not being in a class or in a center that they're required to be. And these term mode and merge mode. Merge mode is a combination of both. Term mode would be if you wanted to see, maybe there's a certain way that your schedule is for the entire term, and you want to put off times during the term. So this is actually just going to give you a weekly view, no dates on this one, and maybe the school's not even available during certain hours. So let's say the first hour here, we're going to mark that as off times. And I just did that the same exact way under term mode. Is we're going to drag, click and drag over the time that we wouldn't be open. So that won't even count against anyone if they're not there during those hours. Alright. The next thing, this is the big one, is importing your students' classes and registration. Those, I would say, would be the minimum report of imports that you would need to do to get everything running. And this, hopefully, after going through all this, you guys will have a clear understanding and not have to go through it. And I know we've had a lot of schools that get stuck on certain things, so I'm trying to help you out with the the field mappings on those imports. Like, these are the headers that you want to have on each one of your CSV files, which is a comma separated value file, and it's basically, it can either be a text or an Excel file that you've basically just created and you've saved as a CSV file. And the first one here is the student import, and this is basically just going to give all the details about your student. So I mean, you can have as minimal of an approach to this as you'd like, or if you want to include everything, you can on there. And then also to add functionality, if you'd like your students to be able to log in to maybe view their class schedule, or maybe get reports on their own attendance and things like that, you may want to include such things like a student password. so that they can log in and do some administrative stuff as well. They're obviously going to have less privileges than the regular system admins. But let's take a look at that import. But before we do, one other thing to mention: when you're running the student import, there is an option that has to deal with that when you're running it through ADX, which is our Accudemia Data Exchange program, which allows you to import in. It's a download from the website, and I'll show you where that's at. Basically, it's for user groups. When you import your students, you can also have them belong to a certain group. For instance, on this one, I was showing that if you have a classification like freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, which most of the schools do, and you want that updated each time you do the import, you can actually tell it to remove any groups that are not in the file when you import. So you do have an option to check that if that's something you want. The only bad thing about this, if there's any groups that you create outside of that, it will actually get rid of those as well. So you have to be really careful. So if you don't use groups but just for this type of stuff, then maybe that's something you want to check so that it updates. And if you recreate those other groups, then it may not matter. Alright, but let's try one now. So first I'd like to show you the area where you can download that tool. If you guys haven't seen that before, it's under Advanced in the administration screen and Import. And right here under Get It Now, you're going to click here and download and install that. You may have to get with your IT if you guys have some kind of restrictions on installing, but that's where you would get it. Okay, we're not going through the install process, but it should create a icon like so on your desktop. And when you connect to it the first time, my information's saved in here, but it's actually going to ask for your normal Accudemia credentials and as well as the address, like the domain that you're connecting to, so that it knows what import to or where the import's going. So basically going to your school's Accudemia site. Alright, and let's see, we're doing the student one first. Okay, and I've already got this created. Normally, what you're going to do is click on New Import, and this will prompt you to go through the New Import wizard. Alright, you're going to see the same screens. I've just already created that ahead of time. Alright, so let's see. Here's the student import. I'm going to click View Details. If you've already got one created, you can even edit the job up here at the top. Okay, and all we did on this screen, this is the very first screen that you see. It's going to ask what the data source, and right now at the moment we just have comma separated value, so that's what the type of file it needs to be. And you can tell it ends with the CSV at the end. And you just click on these three dots here to locate the file and then add it in there, which you see I've already done on this one. And you can change the delimiters and the text qualifiers if you need. But normally it's going to be comma, and you can leave that as double quotes there. Alright, and the next screen here is where we're actually mapping all the data. Okay, you can see in this file I actually have a lot of information. If you want to go with the minimalist approach, on the previous PowerPoint here we have some minimal information. Oops. Like the student ID, the first name, the last name, email address, and phone number. So you can get away with just that. But in here you can see I have the student's first, middle, last, their ID number, a password that I create for them they can change after they've logged in, a student email, a phone number for them, their address, city, state, zip, any additional comments you may want to put in. Now these fields, there's no set way that they have to be put in here. So for instance in comments I have their birth date in here. You could have anything you want in this comments field. your student IDs, they don't have to match the way my IDs are. Here's an example of some of mine. You can see they start with a letter and then have 8 numbers that follow. As long as you have that set up, you can have those imported however you'd like. Alright, and then this one's not always that important. You do want to make sure that everybody that you're importing is active. So you can give them a value of 1, meaning that they're active, 0 meaning they're not, or yes or no, whether they're active or not. And this really has to apply with once you've had one semester in there before. Maybe you want to mark all the other students that aren't that aren't being imported inactive. So this would do this if you have them all set to active in the import. Okay. The next thing is you can specify a photo. So if you have actually like an archive list of all the student photos and you have a location, you can actually do that, put this photo. And then here we run into the student groups, like I was saying. Now this doesn't say student. If you notice, everything here on the mapping say student, but now we have a different one that's mapped here. It's the student group here, but it's just a user group. So you can map to that so that all the students in this list, they have their classification here, like freshman, junior, sophomore, senior. They're all in there. And then I also have set up a profile questionnaire, which we'll go into more details, but I want you to notice that on these profile questions we have no mappings. And with the profile questionnaire is basically where you can set up additional questions that you'd like information on, maybe to collect demographics and everything. And this can be done through these profile fields. Okay. Now once you see it'll take a few minutes depending on how many students you have to find them, but it'll give you a summary, and you can click on each one of these to double check and make sure that everybody's in there for each one of those. So the 4 groups that it found were freshmen, juniors, sophomore, seniors. The students are all right here. You can verify their data is good. User groups, you can, like I said, if you want, check this box and it'll remove anybody that's any groups that are not imported on this file. Now I have other groups, so I don't want to do that. And not only that, if they recognize the student already in there, it should update their grouping as well. So basically, I usually don't use this, but you can if you want to remove all groups and just create these new groups. Alright, so then I would go through this last screen, give it a name. I gave it this name here, so it's already in there, and then click Finish. Alright, now at this point, I haven't actually ran that. So what I would do is run the import now. We have it there, here. So you can actually click on either one of those. Okay, and you can see this gives you a summary, and it'll either be green or red. You definitely want green, of course. It tells you the time that this program sent it to your Accudemia account and what was all that it found. And this is only half of it, what I like to do. And this is just me. I like to verify that it's actually getting there. Now, when you went to Advanced and Import, where you were going to download the program, the Accudemia Data Exchange, or ADX, you can actually view the execution details too. And what this means is once the server receives your file, it's actually going to create a log of every file that it's received. So you can see that it was created at 6:21 on the server time, of course, so this is never going to be exactly correct, but you'll be able to see that it created one and that it's already finished. If it wasn't finished, it would actually still, if it's still importing that file, you want to give it some time or whatever if this is blank over on this ended at time. But now we should be able to go in and see our students that we've imported. And I think one of them, let's see, Yeah, he was the first one on the list. So there's our student. All right. All right. The next import we're going to go to is going to be importing new classes. This is one that people kind of bump their heads into because they're not sure maybe how exactly they want it at first. You can actually do this two ways. I've got them listed here. You have a class/instructor only import. What that means is if you really just want the information there so that when the student logs into your center, they're able to choose the instructor that's associated with that class, then you would just put a very minimal information that it wants just so that it's happy with the import. And I'll show you where these would get stuck. Basically, when it comes to that screen where it shows you everything that it's found, if it finds something is missing in that import, it will actually let you know right then and there. So at that time you can back out of that import process and go ahead and adjust your file accordingly, and then restart the job, creating the job. This right here is a scheduled class. That's your other option. Scheduled class means that you want to be able to track their attendance. You're actually going to have maybe classrooms set up with sign-in stations for them to run their attendance in at the classroom. And you can see it needs a lot more information, like when's the class start, when does it end, cutoff times, how basically cutoff is how long they can be late before they're not allowed to log in. The other thing is class tardy, what is exactly considered tardy at your school. And also a classroom name is also added on that import. Alright, and I don't know if you guys can see this. I know it's kind of small. I try to blow it up, but they have all these listed in here, and we'll see some of those. Okay, now this is one thing that we ran into with a lot of people importing the new semesters and everything. When you're going to create the classes, there's an option, and it's probably not labeled correctly here, but it says centers, but that also is centers and classrooms essentially. And if you want it to not create new centers automatically, you would have this check mark. But if you haven't created the centers or the classrooms where these activities are supposed to occur, you would actually have that unchecked. So that way you could actually create the centers or the classrooms from the import itself. And that's the only really thing that with the classes themselves that ties in with that one. And we'll see that on the when we go through the run through. So let's go do that now. Also, I'm going to have the import files available to download after this. I'll have a link in the chat window. Okay, and like I said, we normally go to new import job, but I've got one created, so I'm going to view the details, and we're going to edit the job. We go through, we select our class import file. Okay, and this is the detailed class. I wanted to give you an idea of basically all the information that you can have associated with this. Like I said, you can go with the minimal approach, which would have been the first option, where you're just giving the basics that the system wants. And if we go through these, you have a classroom name, the classroom, whether it's active or not, meaning it's a current classroom you're using. Registration number for the class, postfix, and there's a lot of confusion as to what these registration numbers and the postfix have to be, and what exactly is this and that. There's no set format for these. A lot of people will say, oh, it's got to be this way or that way. the registration number could be anything that's a unique number for that particular class. So, you want to definitely, like I said, have it unique, but whatever number you come up with for the registration number you can use as the import. The postfix, and this ties in with the subject area, and we'll get down here and go into that, but then the postfix, this would be what goes at the end after your subject area codes. So if you look down here, part of our our class import can be part of the subject area and get that taken care of as well. So you have subject area code, and like for instance, this is a humanities class. I have HUM is the code prefix. The subject code itself I have is just the number, like 150, 202, 106, whatever the course or the subject area number is. Now this is just the way, like I said, that I do it. These can be done differently. You may not want to use the prefix, subject area prefix. Some people have actually combined this and this to make just the subject area code, which is essentially the same thing, but I just have it separated because that's the way they did it when they made this. So, and then finally the postfix would actually be thrown on the end. So when you see this in Accudemia, a lot of times they're going to have it call it the course ID, and it's actually a combination of this first, this next, and then finally the postfix. So it's pre, code, post, and the postfix basically specifies that exact class, whereas the first two, which most people are familiar with, is just for that subject. Alright, and you can do those however you want, but that's just the order they appear, is prefix, the code, and then the postfix up here. Alright, and the other things that we have is class other. Like I said, these can be anything you want. You don't even have to use this field. I choose to put the credits that are available for that class. And then class comments. This could be a long, drawn-out course description, or it could be as simple as like reading materials or materials that you need for the course, something like that. Whatever you'd actually like. It doesn't have to be anything that I've said. But alright, and then here are the class tardy times and the cutoff time. So anything after 10 minutes is going to be considered tardy. After 15 minutes you've missed the class. That's just the way that I had it. You can set yours the way you like it. Then we have the start times, the end times, the days of the week that they occur. And one thing I want you to notice on here is the formatting. In here we have it mon/2/wid/thur/fry, and what this is the 3-digit short code for the day of the week. So you basically, if it occurred every day of the week, you'd write it just like that. If you were maybe only a meeting on Tuesday and Thursday, you would just have 2, which is the first 3 digits of that day, followed by a slash, and then THU, which is the first 3 digits of Thursday, and that would be all you'd have for that column. And then the next thing is your status, is if it's active or not. So you see you have yeses for these. Then the class short name and the subject area name. Now I actually have these being the same thing. And that's fine, because the class short name is if you want to give it a different name than the actual subject area itself. The subject area name is going to be the broad name for it. So I've seen where a lot of schools have actually taken this, like fundamentals of art techniques, and to give the class short name, they've actually put in brackets ahead of it the registration number, or they put in brackets ahead of it for the short name the full, what we were calling the course ID, which is the prefix, the code, and the postfix all combined, but they put it ahead of the name of the class. So I mean, however you want to come up with that, there is two different things. One's relating to the class, and the other's relating to the subject area. And now it takes us to all the subject area fields. Like I said, these are the subject areas that the classes are going to be falling under. So you could have a broad name for your subject areas. They could even be maybe even generalized, like these could be art, math, science. You can have those kind of subject areas, and then have each one of the class names be the actual name of the class. So it can be done many different ways. Two other things that I add so that they get tied into the data is the term. If you don't specify the term on the class import, usually it's going to make it available for the current term, like the dates that are currently going on while you're importing, assuming that you're not doing this ahead of time. But I usually specify, like this one's spring 2013. I had that ready beforehand, so I wanted it to go specifically to the one that I created. And then finally an instructor ID, which ties the instructor to that particular class. Alright, so that is the long version. When it goes through and it checks, it said, okay, everything's there that I need. So you can double check and make sure that all your classes are there, their start end times. Make sure that it's assigned to the term correctly, your instructors show up. And all we had was their ID. So on this one, you could give more information, like maybe you want their first and last name, and then you wouldn't have to do a separate instructor import. But I did a separate instructor that gave a lot more information about them. So, but it's optional. So, all right. When it comes to importing the classes, we're not worried about the enrollment just yet. There's actually a registration that ties into the enrollment, and we'll look into these options here. One of the other things that I didn't mention as well, you can also tag a tutor ID on there as another column, so you can have all the tutors that would be instructing that on this import. Or you could do a separate import for the tutor and put their assignments that they're going to be on. But we'll see that in the next import registration. And then I would name it finally and click finish. And once again, like the other one, we're going to run the import now. Okay, so we should have our class schedules in there, our instructors, the 21 classes, and all the everything else that we saw in there. So we know it's left us, and I don't think these are that big of files, so these should be already done by the time I get to them. Yeah, so there it goes. We see that it's actually completed that. And if we go under subject areas, this is our broad areas, and like I said, I could have named these and only had a few subject areas instead of a whole bunch. I could have had them more general, like math, science, and whatever. But when you actually edit these, you'll actually see your classes in there under scheduled classes. Okay, this one might not have occurred, this one. Let's see. I think I know art techniques were in there, so let's do that. Alright, so let's edit that one. There we go. So here's one of my humanity ones. And you can see it assigned the CRNs in there for that particular class, because that's a unique number for that period in time when that class occurred. You can see it put my 3 parts of that code together, the subject area code, the code itself. I'm sorry, this was the prefix and the code, and then the postfix of the actual class. If we go back to general information, because this is talking about the subject area, which is the general thing that this falls under, it just has the prefix and the code. And even in the list here of the subject areas, you won't see the postfix for that particular class. It's not until you get to the classes that it's there. Alright, and finally this brings us to registration. This is where we tie the the subject to the class to the student ID. Alright, and so that's basically all you really need for registration. This is going to register all your students as long as you have a file with those three things in it. I don't know if you can see the picture there, but that's all we have in that file. Okay, now this is if you are doing this for the first time that semester, and you may want to even just have it set up to do this regularly, even if you schedule it. But basically what this will do is it will overwrite the previous student enrollment and drop any students that are not in this import file. So you can do that with students. This is the first section is students. The second section is instructors. And then the other thing is your tutor assignments. So if you wanted to include not only the student ID but instructor IDs and tutor IDs on this one, you could actually do that as well, so that they're all taken care of in this one registration. But like I said, the simplest approach would just be those three that we specified before: the student ID, the subject name, and the class ID. Alright, so let's go back to this, and we're going to pull up the registration one. Okay, normally new import job, but we're going to edit this one since I've already got it created. Select the file. Okay, and you see, and in fact in this one I actually have more fields in the actual import file, and I wanted to show you that it would actually work without all this extra information. If I didn't want to choose the term that it's going to be occurring in, if I didn't want to include an instructor ID or a tutor ID, basically this would still work with just the bare minimum. So if I leave these ones right here blank, which is basically when it says select here, is basically leaving it blank, that it's still going to work as long as you have those minimal things that it wants, like the student ID, what subject it's for, and the actual class that they're going to be attending. So just mapped off of those, and you can see, like I said, I didn't tell it a term, so it's going to assume it's the current term. If I go back here and I just select this drop down and give it the term name, and it matches a term, it's a or actually I don't think it has to match this because it's just checking this file. It's going to find this one term that I had specified, and then the students. And basically you've got this ID is all you have for the students, so there's not any of the first name, last name. You didn't include it, but it'll get tied in once it gets uploaded into the system. Alright. And then here's all of our sections. Really I don't have to have instructors checked or anything. I didn't map them. But if I did have them mapped back there, then I could actually do the instructors as well. So it should overwrite any instructor assignments as well. And I don't have any tutors, so I'm not concerned about that with this. If I did, I would possibly tell them to overwrite. Now what it means by append is if you're actually wanting it to just add to the tutor's assignments for whatever's in this import file, rather than wiping everything out and then adding whatever's in this one. And then finally we're going to name it just like the other ones, hit finish, and then we can run the import now. Okay, so at 142 it succeeded. Basically left this program and went out encrypted over the web to your Accudemia site. And let's see if I can get to the import first. Okay, so this is this perfect example. It's actually still processing the information. So we're going to give it some time, let it work through our numbers here. And once we've seen, and I just refresh the page, you can do that, through your browser. Now when we gave it enough time, it actually has this filled in that it ended, so we know that it's in there. So now if we go to the students, okay, so here's one. Alright, but out of all the courses that we have uploaded in here, she's actually got these enrolled, so there should be 4, and if you want to see all the selected, you actually can go up here to show selected. So you can see we have our 4 classes that they're registered for showing up here. And it was set to overwrite, so we know that this is definitely all the most current information. That's how, it's not something that's in there. We had all the boxes checked to overwrite. If we go back and edit this job, this should be only things in this file, other than tutors, which we didn't even have. And let's try it real quick. Apple. And we click on her details. Okay, and then there's the enrolled into. So you'll see the course ID, which is that combination of the 3 different codes together. Okay. Alright, and then this is one that's I put on the list of topics we're going to go over, that I put the infamous all-in-one import, because a lot of people, this is what you guys are getting out of other systems. So if you're using Banner or any kind of other software that you actually have all the students in, you're usually going to get one huge file with all this information, and it's really at that point just a matter of getting the information that's be able to be used in Accudemia. So here's just an example of a sample all-in-one, some of the fields that you may want to include, and it's student ID. We have first and last name of the student, their email address, phone number, class registration, subject name, instructor's name, and their instructor ID. And then that's even minimal, because you could have a ton more fields in there and get it all in there. But we're going to see how it all goes into Accudemia here. And once again, using our import tool. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Okay, so I already have it done. Normally you're going to new import job. We're going to edit this one. It's the all-in-one import that I created. We're going to select the file, click here. Okay, and basically we're just going to map everything that we have in here. A lot of this is, you don't have to do this file. If you have just the one import file, you don't have to do all 3 of those separate like we were doing before. This is everything all in one. So you're taking a little bit of information from each one of those, as much detailed information as you want from the student, and then the student stops right about there. Now we're adding information about your subject area, and once we have that, so there's a little bit about the subject area, and then we're tying that in with the instructor, so we have all the instructor information that we want. And then finally a class, tying all those So you can imagine that this file can get really large because you're basically taking all that data and having a new row for the data that matches all of that together. So, you know, basically you're matching the student with the subject, with an instructor, with a particular class. So you can imagine how big this file will get. And then finally, this is just to give it more information to specify the term. And you can actually create the term all in the same step if you haven't already done so by specifying the term start and end date. So you'll see that some of the imports that they also offer, like a term import, doesn't, it's not necessary. So, alright, so it's found all of our information here. We're going to go next. Okay, and if you want on here, you can also do the same thing, overwrite all, and append if you have any tutors in there. One thing I didn't put in there was tutors. I haven't really worked with the tutors in there, but you could also include the tutors in these imports. And the other tabs, they don't have any other information. You could also have it skip users that are already in the system, which, in other words, if you don't want their stuff to be up to date, but you never know, you may want to have that if it was like people that are never going to be at the center again, and you're reusing numbers, so like student ID numbers. And then also you could have it where it generates passwords automatically for new users, so you don't have to actually create a password field. So that's going to be on there as an option. Alright, and I think we're good, so we're next, and we'll name it again and hit finish. I'm not going to run this one. This is a pretty big one. It goes through a lot of students. I've done it one time before. It's 1,000 student enrollments, 494 instructor assignments, and all this other that it finds. And you can actually view all the details right here, which is a summary of what everything we've kind of seen goes on. Alright, let's see. And I've still got a few people with me, so I think we're doing good. Alright, so these are some of the other imports that we have here. Is these are optional because you may not actually need these if you include them in some of the other imports that you do. The center assignment import, I recommend this even if you're not the one that's doing the imports per se. If you can give a list to whoever's doing the imports, if you're like a center administrator, so that you can tell them what courses you want to be offering at your center. This is a good one because you'll have to run this each semester if it's going to change. You want to be able to assign all the subjects or classes to the center. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to have the classes, or you could just do a generalized thing and have it just the subjects. Then you're going to have the center name. So for however many centers, though, if you want to create one import for all the centers, you're going to have that data repeated, either the subjects, repeated for each center that you have listed in there. But basically you're going to have a column for the center name and a column for the subject area name that you want to have in there, or the center and then the class name. That way it gets assigned to that center. That way you don't have to do that manually, which can be a real task, so especially if you have several thousand. And then the tutor assignment import, this is essentially the same thing. You're using the tutor ID and you're linking it to a particular class that they can teach. Or if you want to go more basic, it's just a subject that they can teach. Instructor detail import, this is if you want to have all the details, but you can actually, as you've seen in the AllinOne import, I had a lot of details on the instructor already in that one. It just gets repeated over and over if it's an all-in-one, so depending on how big the file gets, you may not want to do that all in one and do their own separate thing for instructors in each group that you have, tutors and everything with more details. The last two I just don't think they're really necessary, but you could actually create a term import, but it's really easy. As you saw, you just put a name on it and put the start date, end date for that term, and then it's done. So you could do that. Like I said, we saw in one of the imports it was actually done on the same import as well. Then subject areas, you could actually create just a separate import for just the subject areas themselves, which are basically like the category or the general area that each class fall under. But usually that's done when you do the other imports as well. So, alright, and it's going to expire 30 days, so after that you can either email us, or we also have at the documentation website, under the import section, a zip file that you can download from there that has all the samples, and not just the ones that we went over today. So if you wanted to see even like the subject area and the term imports, how those are done. Let's see. And I think I have that open up here. So this is what it looks like. This is our importing and exporting part of our documentation. Alright. Alright, so now that we've gone through all the importing, I know people probably got some questions. We'll take care of those at the end as well. We're just going to go through some of the other things you could do to start up your new semester. Setting up tutor schedules. This is a good thing so that you can basically specify the times that the tutors are going to be available. And let's go ahead and do that now. Sorry, tutor schedule. Alright, and basically you're going to set these up based on their location. So wherever the tutor is going to be, you would actually go in here and choose the particular place. For instance, in this case, we're going to do the library computer lab. And I know I have Mr. Hulk Hogan here. He's one of our tutors. Alright, and as you can see, I've already got a schedule for him, but that's only in the library. On Saturdays, let's say, he also goes to the English study lab, and he'll be working there, so we're going to apply that. You can see the red section means he's working in another center, but Saturday morning we're going to click and drag and tell him that he's going to be available. And basically, depending on the center, you may have either all the subject areas available if it's been assigned to that center, or maybe you have services available. So for instance, on this one, they have tutoring as the only thing available as a service. So this one they don't even specify any of the subject areas, it's just tutoring. So that's what he's going to be doing in that block. He'll be available for anybody who selects tutoring when they sign in to the English Studies lab there. And it's pretty much that simple. You really just check what lab they're going to be at, put in their name, and drag and drop in the schedules. Term mode means the normal Monday through Friday work week that they're going to be working throughout the term. Exceptions only would be days that they're going to request off or they're not going to be there. And merge would be like a combination of both. Usually I like to use one or the other because the merge is really for viewing maybe. Alright. Alright, so here we go. Now that we have a schedule in for our tutors, we can actually schedule them to do appointments. I know some of the schools I've talked to, they actually set these up to begin out their semester. They actually do all the appointments ahead of time. for the semester. And for scheduling appointments, we're going to go to Accudemia here, and we're going to go under appointments and do the wizard here. Okay, so we're going to go. Okay, first thing it's going to want is the student. We'll give it a second here to load. Alright, so we'll just select the first student here. Alright, and taking a second here. Alright, and then we're going to choose what days they would like to create the appointments for. And let's say this student does Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. We're going to go next. Okay, we're going to choose the subject area that they need to help get help in. And let's see. We're going to do our art one. Art history and appreciation, and then go next. Okay, so they're going to be doing tutoring. Okay. Alright, I guess I chose one that everybody's available in this time. Okay, and he has a schedule in here. So this is basically what I was wanting to show you, is that now, see, it tells you the days that are here, like Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you could set it for 9 a.m. each of those days. Select all of these and go next. But we'll just finish that, and then it says, are you sure you want to create the valid appointments? Yes. Alright, and it says these can be differences between the reservation and the actual appointments depending on availability. But you can see it actually did all those appointments. So if we go to all appointments here, now we'll see that 9 a.m. for all the days that we selected for that tutor and that student at the library. Okay, this is tying back to our student import that we had. It's the profile questions that we had at the end of that file, and basically what these are is demographic things that you may want to collect about your students that there isn't a field for in Accudemia. So while you're setting up the profile questionnaire here, you'll go to your control panel, and you're going to go to profile questionnaire, and this is where you're actually going to create, and if you're familiar with creating the surveys, basically you can create a page title, give it a description, and then add your questions. Is it male, female? What's the birth date? Would you like to see a counselor? These can even be something that you actually survey the people on as well to get what their favorite color. And but they can also be imported if it's certain things that you don't want them to be answering. And you just go ahead and create this and then save the changes. Once you've done that, there's a certain format that goes into getting these to work. Okay, here is how you would import the profile questions and what their format is. It's going to be basically, if you notice on the header of each one of these last rows here, we have the @ symbol, the word profile, and then 1, and in this case we have :1. You can also do 1,1, and what that stands for is the page number, comma, question number. Alright, so here's an example of a 2-page questionnaire with 3 questions per page. So you can have at profile, page equals 1, question equals 1, and you can actually have it fully written out like this if you need. But there's actually some accepted shorthand versions, like you see down below in that file, or up here with the 1, 2 as an example. Okay, when you're actually running it in ADX, you're not going to map these fields. They're just going to be left unmapped. What will happen is when it realizes the @ symbol with the profile here, it's actually going to realize it's a profile question. Okay, and I think we don't have to try this one. We did this actually on the student import. So as long as you have your headers on each one of those with the @ profile 1, 1, for instance, in parentheses, that should import to the first page and the first question, and then just follow on down the page. And you saw how we created the question here. I've basically already created this one, but if we were wanted to add maybe more questions, you would add a new question, edit the question, so let's say you wanted to erase a field, accept the changes. You could make the answer required, make it text or multiple choice, and then you can put in your answers here. Alright, so you have all your different things here. Once you have those in there, that's pretty much all it's going to take, and then you just save your changes. Alright, well, thanks for participating, guys. I have 2 things though here. One is Engineerica.com/webinar -poll. Basically, we just have a brief questionnaire. If you guys could take that. I know we've ran a little over here. I tried not to go too into detail with that. I'm also going to be taking some questions, I know, and there's some probably in the chat. The other thing is, if you want to contact us, this is our email address, support@accudemia.com. And then also, if you have any ideas for improvements to Accudemia, you can always submit them at accudemia.uservoice.com. And if you look on our Engineerica YouTube channel, there's actually a good video on how that works and how to use